So, final question.
Yeah.
Where do you feel astrology is heading, and what do you feel it may need at the moment, or perhaps need to focus on or leave behind?
It's clearly on the rise. And in part for what we were just saying, in a world where people struggle to have a collective sense of shared meaning, they will increasingly look to weird sources of meaning. you know, and astrology at its best is an incredible way of feeling connected to everything. You're literally tracking the movements of the living cosmos that you are a part of, especially if you're looking at it, how it impacts your chart. So astrology could, serve an enormously fulfilling purpose in that sense, giving that people that sense of, to adapt Richard Tarnas's great book, that their psyche feels a part of the cosmos. The danger, though, in that is also there, that the danger that the unhinged aspects of our society, the failure of religion in the post-rational, post-religious West, is replaced by a clumsy, superstitious system that isn't flexible enough for real human needs. And that's the edge we're on for me. I did just, I was working with my researcher this morning. We were creating a presentation, and there was a couple of Rudyard quotes we were ending with. I thought it might be apt to share one or two of them. This is from Humanistic to Transpersonal Astrology, his late great pamphlet, in my view, of 1971. Astrology is a particularly fertile field for the growth of unsubstantiated personal opinions based on the astrologer's unavoidably limited experience. I mean, that's an incredible statement in many ways, you know. And I'm not knocking people, but the danger is that you have one small area, you look at 10, 20, 30 charts, enough for a book, enough for a lecture. You see what you've seen. You travel around the world teaching about it. That's this. And then people read it, and every person that comes through their door that they work with or their friends, they apply this thing that played out in these 20 or 30 select charts, of which you ignored the 40 or 50 where it didn't work so clearly, etc., etc. For this reason, Rudyard continues, the present trend towards a scientific, statistical, and critical analysis of traditional statements is much to be welcomed. However, it also carries the same germs of tragic misapplication. Why? He goes on in the next slide to explain. Facts can be used to destroy the integrity of the human person, even if they are correctly ascertained, which frequently they might not be. Because when presented to that person by another individual or in a book stating them, the knowledge of these facts may utterly confuse or even kill as well as heal and make whole. And then the crucial line, the most important line in astrological literature to me, facts have no value except in relation to the consciousness which perceives them. So the setting in which the natal chart facts or interpretations are offered becomes crucial. So the counseling question is not just this afterthought. It's not just, oh, I've got all this astrological information, I want to make sure I do it nicely. It's that the real magic of helping someone transform or heal their life can't happen unless you're connected to the emergent edge of their experience. Unless what you're saying is actually reaching them in that place and not just an outside thing, that they're scribbling away notes to potentially never go back to or simply be confused by a year or two later. So there does need to be statistical work with astrology, bigger data sets. So when I did this turning point research with my researcher, where we analyzed the transformational moments in people's lives, and when I did the planetary node research, we're using a chart database of a couple of thousand of charts, right, with detailed breakdowns. So take a historical figure like Winston Churchill. We've got his chart or the chart of the century he's in, but we've also got individual events in his life when he became prime minister, Gallipoli, whatever. So there might be 30 charts in that one folder of that one chart. Because this statistical work is important. Since Gokalan, you know, who was using data sets of 1,200, 1,300, couple of thousand charts for his personality keyword testing of, whether Jupiter just behind the ascendant did lead to an increased chance of being an actor, or Moon just behind the ascendant a writer, or Mars a sports person. But I think we have to continue that. But that's not the whole answer. That's a kind of an attempt to come out of this myopia of only having the 20 or 30 example charts that you use and just testing all the other various expressions that these forms could take and their statistical approximate efficacy. But alongside that, we have to remember what Rudyard's saying. The consciousness of the individual whose chart it is the key factor in determining how much use they gain from the whole experience. So things that understand consciousness, psychology, counseling, coaching, looking at your own development and then how you interface with another in this mysterious space we occupy when we do consultations. That is also key. Without that, how are we really going to help people? Because the danger becomes, and social media amplifies this, throwaway phrases on Instagram, short little routines on TikTok, saying something about one placement or even one sun sign. 1 in 12 people, maybe 800 million people on our planet have that thing. And we're giving one 30-second dose of what it means. I mean, this simply cannot be true. So as astrology is on the rise, it seems to me certain movements within astrology have to take seriously the idea of legacy, the old astrological principles of being a research institution, or the old idea of like maintaining a certain integrity about the subject and its efficacy, as well as, I would argue passionately, this need that astrologers don't have to become therapists. You don't have to do that work. It might be useful to have a couple of good therapists on your books that you could recommend people or if people ask. But to ignore the world of counseling and coaching and all this psychological information that's come out of these various movements. Look at Rudyard's books. Person-centered astrology comes from the work of Carl Rogers. His interest in humanistic psychology, or that pamphlet From Humanistic to Transpersonal Astrology. He's just taking these terms from the history of psychology. He was following the evolution of psychology in the 20th century and seeing that it was directly relevant to how astrology would be practiced. I think we all need to acknowledge that, even if you're not a psychological astrologer. You have to acknowledge that paying attention to how you come across when you interface with someone is important.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. That was great. Where can people find you? The research
Yeah.
you're doing, is it still the Pluto School?
No, it's markjonesastrology.com, although plutoschool.com would also get you there. Um, well, at the risk of saying things that haven't actually completely happened yet, fingers crossed, there is the course How to Be an Effective Astrologer coming out either the end of this year or early next year, in which there'll be a combination of pre-recorded material and live mentoring groups to look at charts. There is my spiritual psychology coaching training, really designed for astrologers who are happy to engage with the idea of being a coach or a counselor without going the full training as a therapist kind of route. And then obviously I'm offering consultations and I do short midterm mentoring work with people after the chart reading too, to help them in that transformational window, stay with what their process is, have support during that change.
Great. So markjonesastrology.com.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Frank.
You.